All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Sivan, Stephen Terry Zinn, for dedicating all the Shumer Drashos this month of gratitude to Hashem as they welcome their fifth grandchild, Gavriel Amichai Zinn, and the loving memory of Dr. Zinn's mother, Devorah Bas Rabbi Yisrael Yoel. And Shendin Avram Kelman from Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh, narration of the yahrzeit of Avram's father, Rafael Yechiel ben Avram, Zichron Levrach. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamos Havan Aliyah, the families in the Chama. Of course, we dedicate our learning in the schos of our precious hostages. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring them home, b'shalom and b'karov, in the schos of our soldiers. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu allow them to be matzliach b'chol ma'aseh yadeihem. And of course, the Ilui Nishmas, all of the precious soldiers that we lost over Shabbos and over Sunday. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu provide an aliyah for their neshamas and a nechama for their mishpachos. So, with that, let us begin. A lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Today's daf is Kuf Yud 110, and we are picking up the Meretz Hashem on Kuf Tes Amud Beis 109b, 11 lines up from the bottom. 11 lines up from the bottom. So the Gemara says as follows. We actually started this yesterday, but okay, then we left it for today. Hu gaver the mashkin pardeisa lechavre. So remember again, focusing on what we've talked about in the past, called mashkanta de sura. Mashkanta de sura is essentially, again, I lend Ruvain $10,000. Ruvain gives me a field. Now the field is not simple collateral, but rather the field is a form of repayment. In other words, we assess that use of this field is worth X amount of dollars per year. Let's say it's worth $1,000 a year. I'm going to use the field for 10 years, and at the end of 10 years, the debt is paid off. That's called mashkanta de sura. So that's the case the Gemara is focusing on over here. Who governed the mashkin pardes lechavre? So again, I will say. So again, I lent Ruvain $10,000. Ruvain went ahead and gave me this field, or in this case, a vineyard. And what happens? La'eser shnin. Now again, the goal was that I was going to use the field for 10 years, and at the end of 10 years, the debt would have been paid. But a little bit of a wrinkle in the plan. V'kash l'chamesh shnin. The field essentially, kash means it became old. It became old and stopped producing fruit 5 years in. Now Rashi points out over here, first white line in Rashi, v'kash hiskin ubizmanu shayroi lekach. Now here's what's interesting. What's interesting is the field became old, stopped producing fruit, but this was normal. In other words, that it's not the pshat that something irregular happened, but rather again this field became old and after 5 years just stopped producing fruit. Now, the Havi Shaila in this case is, why would I have accepted the field for 10 years, knowing full well that it would have stopped producing fruit in 5 years? Okay, the Gemara is not dealing with that question right now. Point is, focus over here is, 5 years in, the field has now become old. Again, not prematurely old, this was kind of expected, and now it's no longer producing fruit. So we'll say, so now, what has to happen over here? So obviously now, I have 5 more years of payment to still get from this field. So watch this is fascinating. So Abaye Amar Peirahavi. So Abaye says, okay, it's not a big deal. What do? We take the field. We essentially, look at Rashi, Peirahavi. Rashi says, Eitzim Shebo V'yitlei Mamalva. Now, watch what's happened over here. So this, of course, this was an orchard. So let's say, so what happens? So there are trees. See, remember, the issue over here is the trees stopped producing fruit, but the field still has value. What's the value? The value are the trees inside of the field. In other words, we could chop down the trees, sell the trees for wood, and shalom ha'Yisrael. In other words, there's still value to be gleaned over here. So Abaye says, the wood itself, the trees themselves, have the status of peiros, right, of fruit, and therefore chop down the trees, utilize the wood, and I can make the rest of my money from that wood. Rava says, no, karnahavi, no, the trees are keren. The trees are keren. The trees are principal. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, I, the lender, can't take keren. So just want to point out what's happening over here. In a mashkanta de sura situation, which is this scenario now, I, the lender, am entitled to peiros, right? Produce, not entitled to keren, not entitled to principal. That's the way this works. My debt is repaid through peiros, not through keren. The shaila now is, in this case, the orchard stopped producing fruit. The only monetizable asset are the trees. So are the trees considered to be peiros? In which case, again, I can go in there, chop down the trees, take the wood, sell off the wood, and utilize that to pay off my debt. Or are the trees called keren? Now, if the trees are called keren, if they're called principal, then what should happen over here is The borrower, in this case Ruvain, goes ahead, takes the wood, sells it off, buys another field, and I could go ahead and collect essentially the rest of my debt from that new field. So that's the machlokes Abaye and Rava. So Rava Amar Karna v'yilakach bo karka v'hu ochel peros. No. The trees, even though now they're old and they can't produce any more fruit, but the trees are called keren. The trees are called principal. So therefore, again, take the wood from there, sell it off, utilize that money to purchase a new field. Ruvain's now the owner of that new field, and I could collect my debt from however many years now I need from that new field. Very interesting. So the Gemara says, Metzia is a kasha, yavasha ilan o niktzatz shnehem asrun bo. So we've had this before. This is another case of mashkanta de surah. Another case of mashkanta de surah, where again, same case, I lent Ruvain money. I was collecting my debt from peros, from the tree, then the tree dried up. So both Ruvain and I are prohibited to cut down the tree. Yavash ilan o niktzas, so if the tree dried up or it was cut down, shnei masurim bo, both of us are aser. Now both say again, I'm aser because the tree represents keren, and I as the lender I'm only entitled to peros. And Ruvain, of course, can't just do whatever he wants with it because, again, it's collateralized to me. So Kate said, Yasus, what should we do? Yimkru le'etzim v'yilakach b'han karka v'ochel peros. So ultimately, what should we do? So we should go ahead and sell off the tree for wood, then use the proceeds to buy a field. Ruvain will be the owner of the field, and I will collect the rest of my debt from peros. So we'll say, see from here that halacha l'mayis, so wood from the tree is considered to be keren. My love, Yavash Dumya de Niktzatz. Are we not assuming over here that the case of where it dried up is like the case of where it was felled or where it was cut down? Man Niktzatz Bismano, just like we're assuming it was cut down because again it's no longer producing anything and therefore it's cut down in its right time. Af Yavash Bismano, so too when it dries up, if that was a normal drying up of the tree. The Katani Yilakach Bahan Karka Ochel Peros. And what do you see we do with it? We go ahead and we sell it off, buy a new field, and I, the lender, am entitled to peros. What do you see from here? Alma Karnahavi. So what do you see from here? You see from here that when you have a collateralized field, right, and the lender is getting payment for his debt from the trees, and the trees dry up, those dried up trees are considered to be keren, their principal. And therefore the way that it works is borrower takes it, sells it off, purchases new land, I, the lender, am then entitled to take peros from the new land. To which the Gemara says, "Lo, niktzatz dumya di yavash." No, rather, again, I will say, the case of where it's cut down is like the case of where it dried up. Ma yavash below mano, just like the case of yavash is talking about a case where it prematurely dried up. Af niktzatz below mano. So too, again, if it was cut down, it's also talking about a case of where it's cut down before its time. Therefore, you can't bring any raya, you can't bring any proof from that particular case. Tashma. So we'll say, so again, we're still focused on the same question over here. Right? What do I do in this case where the trees dried up? Are the dried up trees considered to be peros? In which case I, the borrower, could take the dried up trees, sell it, and collect the rest of my debt? Or are they considered to be keren principal? In which case all that could happen is the borrower takes it, uses the proceeds to purchase a new field, and I, the lender, am entitled to peros from the new field. So no raya from that case. So Tashma, another case. Interesting case here. Naflu la gifanim v'zeisim Zikanim. So let's say, so now interesting. Let's say this is about a case of a wife. A woman inherits property. Her father dies, and she inherits property from her father's estate. Now, what happens? So let's say, so literally again, Gefanim v'zeisim zikanim, which means old vines, or old olive trees, ultimately fall to her. Rashi says over here, the Isha Mishanises Mesavia. Rabbi Shmuel says the Isha is Rachel's married to Ruvain, right? Rachel's father dies. Property therefore falls to Rachel. Old vines and old olive trees. So it's the top of Kuf Yud 110a. What's the halacha? Yimkru le'etzim b'yilakach ben karka v'ochel peros. So what should she do about say? So now here, remember again, here's what's interesting. She remains the owner, right? Title remains with her. Husband gets peros over the use over the course of the marriage. So what should she do? Now in this case over here, the stuff she inherited was old. It's old vines, old olive trees, which means they're not really producing fruit. So now the Gemara says, what should she do with them? Yimkru le'etzim. She should sell the vines and the trees for wood. Right, because remember they're not fruit producing anymore. Sell it for wood. V'ilakach bohen karka, and then she should use the proceeds to go ahead and buy land. V'hu ochel peros. And ultimately, again, a husband could go ahead and eat the peros of the land. So I will say, so what do you see? So we'll say, halacha l'maisa, this would seem to indicate that where someone has the right to peros, and then the peros producing item dries up, no longer produces peros, that item is considered to be keren, principal, and therefore again the owner takes it, sells it, uses the proceeds to buy new land, and the person entitled to peros gets peros from that. To which the owner says, well, maybe not ema v'hizkinu. Say we're talking about a case of where the items aged prematurely. By saying the other possibility is lav mil kimna lahi. We could also set up these cases in this following scenario. Kegon shenaflula bisada acheres de kakal yakarno. The other possibility is we're talking about a case of where these vines actually showed up or these vines are in a different field. In other words, we'll say, we always take it to mean that in the case of hiskinu, where the vines or the tree is drying up, that we're talking about again where she owns the land in which the vines or the tree are situated. We could be talking about a case over here where she inherited vines or trees, but she doesn't own the land. She doesn't own the land. So we'll say, so in that kind of case, where all she owns are the trees or the vines, certainly in that case, they're going to be considered to be keren. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, when they dry up, take the proceeds, buy new land, husband gets peros from that new land, and she retains title. Okay, so bottom line, how do we paskin? So we'll say, this is actually a very important case because you could see a situation like this coming up. So let's just reframe it once more, right? I lend Ruvain, let's get back to the court case. I lend Ruvain $10,000, right? Okay, no problem. We have a plan. What's the plan? Ruvain has a field. Ruvain has a field. He's going to give me the field. I'm going to use the field for 10 years, and we assess that the value of usage of that field per year is $1,000. Beautiful. I'm going to use the field for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, we call it even. That is called mashkanta de sura, right? A Surian collateral. That's what we call that. Fine. Only wrinkle over here is 5 years in. 5 years in, the field stops producing. Let's call it an orchard, right? The trees stop producing fruit. They just got old. They stopped producing fruit. Not like an active guy. They just dried up. Normal aging and maturation. Okay, so now obviously Ruvain owes me another $5,000, right? He still owes me money. So now we'll say the shaila is, what is the status of the dried up trees? Are the dried up trees considered to be principal? In which case they're owned by Ruvain. I don't have any rights in them. They're owned by Ruvain. Ruvain could sell them, purchase new land, and I can get peros from the new land, or maybe not. Or maybe the trees themselves are considered to be peros. Maybe the trees are considered to be produce, in which case I have the rights to the dried up trees and can do with it whatever I want. That's the machlokes Abaye and Rava. Abaye is saying the dried up trees have the status of peros. Rava is saying the dried up trees have the status of principal. I will say, how do we paskin? Rabban paskin is like Rava, that the dried up trees have the status of principal, of keren. And therefore, in this kind of case, Ruvain takes the dried up trees, sells them off, purchases new land, and I, the lender, have peros in that new land while Ruvain retains title. Beautiful. Let's go weiter. Rabbi say Kof Yoram Medalef 110a, 4 lines down. Ahushtara taviksiv be shnin stama. It's a very interesting case over here. So ultimately, again, same. All of these are mashkanta desura cases. So what happens? I lend Ruvain $10,000. Now listen, interestingly enough, Rashi says over here, "Haushtar shtar mashkanta desura b'mishlim shtanya ilain v'lo perish ba min ashram." So this is very interesting. Mashkanta desura again. I lend Ruvain $10,000. In our loan document, what does it say? It says that I am going to use the field for years in order to pay off the debt. I will say there's only one piece of information which is missing, which is how many years. A little detail, right? How many years I'm going to get to go ahead and utilize the field. So the Gemara says, so what happens? Malva Omer Shalosh, Lova Omer Shtayim. So the lender, right? So the lender, the Haushtar Davaksibe Shnin Stama. Malva Omer Shalosh Lova Omer Shtayim. So the Malva says that, right, the lender says 3 years and the borrower says 2. So what's the halacha? Kadim Malva Vachlinu Leperi. So say, so now what happened? So the borrower came along. So I'm sorry, kadim malva v'achlun leperi. So we'll say, so now Rashi says over here, kadim malva v'achlun leperi, the shana shlishes mikame denitve ledina. So ultimately, again, the lender went ahead and took the third year produce, right, before they had a chance to go ahead and come to Beis Din. So mi ne'aman, who is believed? Who is believed? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, karka becheskas ba'ala kayamas. So Rabbi Yehuda says, look, land in general, both says in the chazaka of its owner. So therefore, again, in this case over here, the lender is going to be believed because the borrower is going to be believed because halacha l'maisa. So we'll say, remember again, so just understand what's happening over here. So I lend Ruvain $10,000, right? So now we have a mashkanta d'sura which says, I'm going to use Ruvain's property for a number of years to work off the debt. We just never established, the document doesn't say how many years. I, the lender, say 3 years. 3 years. The borrower, Ruvain, says, no, I was only giving it to you for 2 years. For 2 years. So we'll say, so who is believed? Now, to throw the other wrinkle in here is I went ahead and I took already third year produce. Right? So I already took the produce. That's kadam alav achlun leperi. I ran ahead and already took the third year produce and consumed it. So we'll say, so now, who's right? So Rabbi Yehuda says, look, obviously Reuven is going to be right because halacha l'maisa, the owner always has the chazaka over his produce. That's over his property, excuse me. He's the owner, and therefore again his chazaka extends to his produce. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer, karka becheskas ba'ala kaima. Rav Kahana Omer, peros becheskas ochlehan kaimi. Rav Kahana says, no, the peros, the produce is in the chazaka, or the produce is under the presumptive ownership of me, the lender. Be the lender. So let's say, see what's happening over here? There's two opposing chazakas, right? The chazaka of the land places third year produce in the possession of Ruvain, the borrower, because he's the owner of the land. On the other hand, the chazaka of the produce is placed with me, the presumptive owner, the lender, because I am utilizing this land to go ahead and pay off the debt. The Hilchos HaKala say to Rav Kahana, and the halacha follows Rav Kahana, Domar Peros becheskas ochlehen kaimi. I'll say this is interesting. The halacha follows Rav Kahana, because Rav Kahana holds that halacha l'maisa, the produce remains with its presumptive owner, which ultimately, again in this case, is the lender. V'hakaim alon the Hilchos HaKala say to Rav Nachman. But one second, we've learned before about say this not so long ago that the halacha follows Rav Nachman. Now, what does Rav Nachman say? The Amar Karka becheskas ba'ala omedes. Rav Kahana holds that karka generally again remains in its presumptive ownership, the chazaka of the owner. Rashi says over here. Becheskas v'hakaimalad hilchas Rav Nachman bedini. Rashi says Rav Nachman karka becheskas ba'ala omedes ka'amar gabi socher merchatz mishnei masar zuhuvim l'shana midinar zav l'chodesh. Let's remember again, we had this case not so long ago where I literally rent property to someone, and I will say, remember again, I give a yearly amount and a monthly amount, and then it's a leap year. Right? And the shaila is, who gets the benefit of the 13th month? Rav Kahana says the chazaka always remains with the owner of the land. To which the Gemara says, the Amar Karka becheskas ba'ala omedes Hasam milsa de la vida legaluyehi. So this is very interesting. There, in the case of in the bathhouse, that's because, again, I will say, halacha l'maisa, that matter is not going to become revealed. In other words, we're not going to get any more clarity on that situation than we have right now when the case presents itself. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, we place the ownership of the property, we place the chazaka together with the owner of the property. Hacha milsa da'avida legaluyehi. But I will say over here in this case, now remember again, what's this case? This case is where I, the borrower, the lender, am claiming that I have the field for 3 years, and the borrower, who in this case is Ruvain. So remember again, the borrower in this case is Ruvain, but Ruvain, the borrower, is the owner of the land that is being used for the mashkanta, the surah. He's saying 2 years. This could become clarified. How could it become clarified? We could find edim, different things like that, and therefore, va'atruche beidina trezimni lo matrechinan. We don't want to keep bothering Beis Din to have to go ahead and extract produce and extract land. Look at Rashi. So Rashi says over here, So in this case over here, where I'm claiming that I have the field for 3 years, Reuven's claiming it's only collateralized for 2 years. This is something which can be clarified through witnesses, and therefore look at the next Rashi. Because maybe again I'm right, I the lender am right. And therefore, again, if it turns out that I'm right, then Beis Din is going to have to convene twice. Once to go ahead and hear the case now, a second time to go and extract the property from the borrower, should I be proven right. So therefore, Rabbi says, this is actually really very interesting. So halacha l'maisa, therefore, again, the Gemara Paskin is like Rav Kahana. So therefore, in this kind of case, where again, let's go back once more. So in this kind of case where I'm lending Reuven $10,000. It's the same Mashkanta de Surah case, right? So I'm lending Reuven $10,000. Reuven gives me a piece of property. The goal is I'm going to use the property until the debt is paid down. Problem in this case over here is the number of years of usage was not recorded in the document. I'm claiming 3 years. Reuven's claiming 2 years. I go ahead and I consume third year produce already. So what's the halacha? So we'll say we pass like Rav Kahana. What does it mean like pass like Rav Kahana? That we leave the produce in the chazaka of the person who owns the produce. Who is that? Me, the lender. Me, the lender. Even though we pass that in general, land remains in the chazaka of its owner. This is a case of produce. Produce remains in the chazaka of its owner, which is me, the lender. Okay, incredible. Next, Malva Omer Chamesh, Lova Omer Shalosh. So we'll say similar case, just here the gap is wider. So same case, I'm lending Reuven money, right? The goal is I'm going to use his property for a certain number of years to go ahead and pay down the debt. And now what happens? I claim I'm entitled to the land for 5 years. Reuven claims that he's entitled to the land, that I'm only entitled to the land for 3 years. What's the halacha? Amrle, I see lashtarech. So the Gemara says, so what happens? So we say to him, we claim, bring me your shtar. In other words, Reuven could say to me, okay, bring me your document. Show me the loan document that says that you are entitled to this land for 5 years. So Amrle, shtara irkasli. I claim I lost the document. Rabbi Yehuda, Malva Ne'eman. So ultimately, again, Rabbi Yehuda says the lender is believed. Why is the lender believed? Migo di by Amalakucha hi biyadi. So it's very interesting because remember, what's happening over here is I, the lender, have already utilized the field for 3 years. Now what's the chap of 3 years? 3 years already represents the time of chazaka. So remember, I've already used it 3 years in an uncontested fashion. If I really wanted to pull shtick, right? If I really wanted to go ahead and really manipulate things, what could I do? I could say, I own it. I could say that I own it. Right? Vaharaya, I've gone ahead and I've lived here for 3 years uncontested. Suppose there's this is like amigo. Amigo, right? Also remember, what does migo mean? Migo means since I could have made even a stronger claim, I'm believed to make the inferior claim. So I could have claimed that the land is mine altogether. When I quote unquote only claim that I'm entitled to 2 more years, I am believed. I'm really popular Rav Ashi. Rav Zvid, Rav Avia, lo sfira lehu. Had Rav Yitzchak says. So Rav Papa says Rav Ashi. Rav Papa says Rav Ashi. Ultimately, again, Rav Zvid and Rav Avia do not hold like this idea of Rav Yehuda. Lo sfira lehu had Rav Yehuda. My timer. What's the reason? Haishtara kevon de lagovaina kamishar zihiri bay. So, because it doesn't make sense, I will say, when a person lends money, there is one thing you have which allows you to collect the money. What's the one thing you have which allows you to collect the money? Shtar. In other words, if you're a lender, there's no way you're letting that shtar out of your sight. In this case over here, when I claim that I don't have the shtar, what do we assume is happening over here? The Gemara says, there's only one, so we'll say, rather, the way we look at this is like this. The way we look at this is, I, the lender, have the shtar. I have it. So why am I not releasing it? Why am I not sharing it? Because I want to be able to utilize the land for another 2 years. In other words, we don't look at this as, we're not saying that, or Rabbi Yehuda wanted to say this amigo, right? The amigo is, since I've lived here for 3 years already, I could claim, it's mine. Now I'm only claiming it's not mine, but rather, again, I'm utilizing it as collateralized property, but I have another 2 years of collateralized use. So it must be believed, because since he could have made even a stronger claim that Allah Chamaisi was living there, it's amigo. To which the Gemara says, no. When a lender can't produce a document, that's fishy. That's fishy. That doesn't make any sense, since the document itself is the only vehicle he has for collection. Rather, what we assume is happening over here is he has the document. He's just suppressing it. Why? Because, right, I think there's an expression like this, of burying a document, burying a, something like that, whatever. Anyway, he's suppressing it. He's suppressing it. Why? Because Allah Chamaisi he wants to go ahead and get 2 more years of use of the collateralized property. If that's the case, Hay Mashkanta Desura, Dechsivi Bey, Bemishlim Shanya Alein, Tepok Arada below Kesef. So I'll say that's the case. What about in a typical Mashkanta Desura document, where it says, at the end of the years of usage, this is talking about for the lender, right? At the end of the years that the lender has to use the field, Tepok Arada below Kesef. This land will go back to its original owner without any payment of funds. In other words, we'll say that's Lochab Mashkanta Desura. The lender uses the field for a certain amount of time until the debt is paid off. Hecha de Kavshe Lishtar. Mashkanta, Vamar Lakucha hi biyadi, Hachanami de Mehemen. So I'll say, so now this sounds like a very easily manipulable case, right? Why? Because watch this. Anytime, so I'll say, so let's say I lent Ruvain money I lent Ruvain $10,000, and the goal is that I'm going to use the field for 10 years. So I'll say, I could easily manipulate this. What could I do? Use the field for 3 years, essentially tear up the shtar, and say, oh, it's mine. It's mine. Vaharaya, I used it for 3 years in an uncontested fashion. Would the rabbis institute something that could so easily be manipulated? And as well say, what this sounds like is any time that you are using collateralized property for an extended amount of time, the user could easily claim ownership by shtar suppression, right? Just don't go ahead and show the shtar or tear up the shtar, destroy the shtar. All that we have to go on is unfettered use of the field for 3 years. That is the years of chazaka, and you could claim ownership. To which the Gemara says, Amar le hasa takinu le rabbanon the mari ara yoiv taska the kari karya. So I'll say no. Here's the difference. The difference is the Chazal instituted is the owner still pays the property tax and still goes ahead and maintains the borders of the field. So Rabbi said that was the show of ownership. So it's interesting. Chazal understood that yes, prolonged collateralized use opens the owner up to someone making a false claim of ownership. And Rabbi said it makes a lot of sense. Right? Think about this for just a moment. You could have these cases of Mashkanta Desura where the lender is using the property for prolonged amounts of time. In which case, if he wants to conveniently lose the shtar and claim ownership, it would be very hard for the borrower to go ahead and refute that claim. Now, the borrower could refute it, right? There's the easy way to refute it. What's the easy way to refute it? Witnesses. But again, I both say witnesses rely on people. And any process that relies on people always has some inherent shortcomings and flaws. So therefore, the Gemara says we go ahead and we produce another fail-safe. What's the fail-safe? The owner of the property is always the one who pays the property taxes and always the one who maintains the borders. So therefore, again, in this case, even though I am getting prolonged use of the property because it's collateralized property, since Ruvain is the one who's always paying the property taxes and maintaining the borders, therefore Allah Chalamaysa, that shows that he is the true owner and prevents me from ever claiming illegal ownership of it. Incredible, really fascinating. Very fascinating. Okay, so the one goes weiter. Okay, so what do you do in a situation where halacha l'maisa, again, there is no property tax? Or what do you do in a situation where the borders aren't maintained? And it's always like, you could have tax-exempt property. Tax-exempt property, I don't know, whatever it is, Ruvain's clergy, right? So tax-exempt property, or something else, or the nature of the field is that the borders don't need to be maintained. What do you do in a case like that? How does Ruvain show that he is still the owner, despite the fact that I'm using it for a prolonged amount of time as collateralized property? To which the Gemara says, Ihu the Afsidan Nafshe. What is incredible. The Gemara says, if that's the case, at the end of the day, I'm sorry. So ultimately, again, so in that case, Ruvain has to take it upon himself that halacha l'maisa, make a macha. Every once in a while, lodge a formal complaint. Now, it doesn't mean a complaint. Rashi says over here, once a year, hang up a sign in shul. Just want to remind you that, the Kiddush this week is sponsored by Ruvain, celebrating his ownership of the field that is collateralized to silver. Make a yearly announcement. Make a yearly announcement that Halacha Ma'aseh, the owner of the field. To which the Gemara says, Lo imche mai. What happens if Ruvain never made this announcement? How does he prevent me from claiming ownership of this field? To which the Gemara says, Ihu hu da'afsid anafshe. Rabbi says, this is profound. You know what the Gemara essentially answers? The Gemara says, look, Halacha is going to help you out, right? And I'm going to give you mechanisms to maintain public knowledge of your ownership. But at a certain point, you have to help yourself. And if you don't help yourself, that system can't help you. It's such a profound Gemara, right? That in other words, halacha and Yiddishkeit provide for many opportunities for us to help ourselves. But it doesn't do the work for you. If you're not going to do the work, then we can't help, the system can't help you. So therefore, this is incredible. So therefore, in a system where, or in a situation where there is a prolonged collateralized relationship between the lender and the field. So in this case over here, I lent Ruvain $10,000. The goal over here is I'm going to have Ruvain's field for 10 years. We'll say 10 years is a very long time. Why? Because after 3 years of uncontested use, I could quote unquote claim ownership. I claim ownership. So now Ruvain, the borrower, whose collateralized field I, the lender, am using, how does he prevent me from going ahead and claiming ownership over the land? So possibility one is we could have a document. The problem with the document, I will say, is generally who holds the document? Who holds the document? Lender. So that's not going to help Ruvain, the borrower. So Ruvain could have a side star, he could have witnesses, or Chazal said, no, Ruvain, you're paying property taxes and you're maintaining borders. That's enough. That's enough. If there's no property taxes or no borders to maintain, make a yearly announcement. What if you didn't make the yearly announcement? Ruvain, you're on your own. Help yourself, buddy. Help yourself. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, you have to take care of you. And if you don't do that, that responsibility is on you and you alone. Incredible Gemara. All right, let's go weiter. Really fascinating. Aris. Well, it's another really interesting case. So now we're going to sharecropping arrangements. The sharecropper claims, right? So I hire a sharecropper, an aris, for my field. The sharecropper claims that I hired him and the agreement was 50% of the produce he gets. Right? And what happens? Balabai says, no, I never promised you 50%, I promised you a third. So mi ne'eman, who is believed? And we'll say, obviously, nothing is recorded in a document over here, right? So who is believed? Mi ne'eman. Rabbi Huda Amar Balabayis. Rabbi Huda says, the Balabayis is believed. Rav Nachman Amra Kol Kaminag Medina. Rav Nachman says, again, let's look at what's done. Let's look at what's done. How much do people hire sharecroppers for? So we'll say, such a fascinating machlokas. So Savra Minei, Lo Pligi. Now we'll say, at first we thought they're really not arguing. Haba Asr the Shakal Arise Palga, Haba Asr the Shakal Arise Tilsa. So Rabbi Huda is talking about a case where Halacha Lamaisa, it was common custom for the sharecropper to take a third. And Rav is talking about a case where it's a common custom for the sharecropper to take a half. Maybe they're not arguing. To which the Gemara says, Amalu Rab Mari Braid Shmuel, Hach Amra Baye, Afil Asr the Shakal Arise Palga. Pligi Rav Yehuda, Amar Balabayis Naman, Di Boy Amar Schiri Ulakiti. No, so what's Rabbi Yehuda always holds that Allah Chabayis the Balabayis is Naman. Why? Because the Balabayis has a migo. What's his migo? Well, so he could say, you're not a sharecropper. What could he say? You're a hired worker. So most remember again, we're using the sharecropper and a hired worker. A hired worker gets a wage. Whatever it is, an hourly wage, a daily wage. So since the Balabayis could say, you're not a sharecropper at all, you are a hired worker, when he says you are a sharecropper, but you're only entitled to a third, not 50%, he is believed. Rabbi says, how do we paskin? Rav Nachman is like Rav Nachman, that we go after Minhag Medina. That if there is a machlokis between the Balabayis and the sharecropper as to how much the sharecropper is entitled to, we look at whatever is the going rate, and that's the rate that the sharecropper gets. Incredible. Yisomim Omrim. Another interesting case here. Hishbachnu. Ubal Chov Amar. Avichem Hishbiach. Amila Havirayas. We'll say, very interesting case here. Watch this. I lent money to Ruvain. Now what happens? Ruvain collateralized property. Okay, so now Ruvain dies. Let's say, again, so now there's no money in the estate. I am entitled to collect land in satisfaction of my debt. The issue is that the collateralized land has been improved. There are improvements on the land. Now in this case, so now what happens? I'm claiming, I the lender am claiming, Ruvain improved this property during his lifetime, and therefore I, the lender, am entitled to those improvements as part of my lien, as part of my collateral. The Yisomim claim, the orphans claim, they improved the land after the death of their father, and therefore I, the lender, have no claims against the improvement. So again, they're not claiming that I don't have a lien against the field. They understand that. What they're claiming is my lien does not devolve upon the improvements that they made after their father died. Incredible. So Amila Haviraya. So we'll say, who is the burden of proof upon? Is it upon me or is it upon the Yisomim? Amud Beis. So Savar Rabbi Chanina Lameimar. So Rabbi Chanina wanted to say the following. He wanted to say, Ara becheskas yasmi kaima va'abal chov l'haviraya. So Rabbi Chanina said, look, at the end of the day, right now, the land is in the chazaka of the orphans. Right? They have the chazaka because they are now the owners, and therefore, again, the burden of proof is upon me. Essentially, I will say, what is it? What is it a case of? What is it a case of? Right? I want to extract property. In this case, again, I want to be clear. The lien is not contested, right? The fact that the land is collateralized to the debt that now Ruvain Zichron Livracha had towards me, no one's arguing on. We're not something very specific about the improvements made on the land. So Rabbi Yehuda says like this: the Yisomim, the orphans, they're the owners. Therefore, again, if I want to extract them, what's mechaver lavaraya? Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's not true. Not true. The orphans have to have the burden of proof that halacha l'maisa that I owe. The Yisomim have the burden of proof that they made the improvements and not Ruvain. My time, what's the reason? Ara kevan de legovaina kaima kemanda gavya dama va'ali Yisom l'haviraya. Why? Because Rabbi said this is collateralized land. Collateralized land is like it's been collected by the lender. So because of that, it's as if it's in my possession. And therefore, what Rabbi say, you're right, it's a motzi mechaver lavaraya. But who's the motzi? Right? Who's the one who wants to extract over here? The Yisomim. So Rabbi say, so fascinating. So right, so Rabbi Chanina says, since the Yisomim are the owners, I'm the extractor, and therefore the burden of proof is upon me to show that Ruvain did the improvements. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, since the land is collateralized, it's as if it is collected by me already, and therefore, again, the burden of proof is upon me Yisomim to show that, in fact, it was them who did the improvements and not Ruvain. Incredible. Abai says as follows. We also learn this idea. Safek zekadam, the safek zekadam, Kot states ve'ina no sinama. So we'll say this is an interesting case which we're actually going to come to in Bava Basra, which is the restriction to plant trees, certain types of trees, within proximity to a city. Again, we're not getting into this now, but so for example, again, you're not allowed to plant a sycamore tree or a carob tree within a certain proximity to the city. So we'll say, so now let's say there's a machloka. So watch this. So let's say again, there's a city, right? And Ruvain plants a tree within the prohibited proximity. So then obviously the responsibility is upon Ruvain to go ahead and uproot the tree. But let's say again, Ruvain planted it first, and then the city came along afterwards, then ultimately again the city has to bear the expenses. Let's say again, Safek Zekadav is Safek Zekadav. Suppose excuse me. Let's say again it's machlokes. It's machlokes. Who got there first, the tree or the city? Then what's the halacha? Kot seitz va'ona no sin damim. The halacha is we cut the tree down, and the townspeople are not responsible to pay Ruvain for his tree. What do you see from here? Alma kevan delamekitz kaimi amina le aisi raya v'shakol. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that since this tree needs to be cut down regardless, we view it as already cut down. And we say to Ruvain, if you want to collect payment, the burden of proof is upon you to show that you were here first. Hachanami, therefore we should say the same thing over here. Since Rabosai, again, I have a lien against this property, right? Therefore, again, it's as if the property has already been collected. And therefore, again, ultimately, again, it is upon the Yisomim to bring a raya that they are the ones who made the improvements, and not Ruvain. So we'll say, so incredible. So therefore, where the Gemara seems to be holding right now, therefore, let's go back to this case. I lent Ruvain money, right? And now Ruvain pledged collateralized property, okay? Ruvain dies, and now halach halamaisa, I have to go ahead and collect the property from the Yisomim, right? There's no money to collect from the Yisomim. The improvements were made to the land. I claim Ruvain made them, and therefore I'm entitled to them. The Yisomim claim they made them, and therefore again, while I still have a lien on the land, I have no rights to the improvements. It appears right now that the Gemara is passing like Rabbi Yochanan, that the burden of proof is upon the Yisomim to show that they made the improvements. Why? Because since this land was already collateralized, therefore it's as if it's already quasi my possession, right? Almost as if it's been collected by me. And therefore, if the Yisomim want to show that I don't have rights in certain improvements, the burden of proof is upon them. Incredible. Let's see. Aisu Yasmi Raya De'inhu Ishbichu. So now let's play this forward. So now let's go ahead and say that halacha l'maaseh, someone brought proof. Okay, they brought definitive proof that they are the ones who made the improvements, not Ruvain, and therefore I, the lender, am not entitled to those improvements at all. So Rabbi Chanina lameimar ki misalkina lahu ba'ara misalkina lahu. So we'll say let's play this out. So let's say now someone brought proof. They brought proof, right? And they showed that halacha l'maaseh, they made the improvements, not Ruvain, and therefore again we'll say everyone agrees that if the Yisomim could prove that, then what? Then halacha l'maaseh, I the lender I still have rights to the land, but I don't have rights to the improvement. So now we'll say, so now what's the halacha? Ki misalkina lahu, when they quote unquote buy me out. So we'll say, so now halacha l'maaseh, now what the Yisomim are going to do is going to pay off the debt, right? So now what do they pay off the debt with? So the Gemara says, ba'ara misalkina lahu, v'ba'ara salkina lahu. So we'll say, so listen to this. So now the Yisomim still own, I still have collateralized property with them. So now the Yisomim said, but we improved the property. You don't have rights to the improvements. That's fine. So now they have to pay out the debt. When they pay out the debt, they have to pay me with real estate. They pay me with land. To which the Gemara said, v'lo, it's not true. But dami misalkina lahu. Not true, actually. They have the ability to pay me out with money. Pay me off with money. In other words, I can't demand real estate. They can pay me money in satisfaction of the debt that I had against their now deceased father Ruvain. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Shlosha Shamalan Ashavach, Umalin Osa B'damin. Both say there are three situations in which improvements have been made, and therefore someone's owed money, but halacha l'maaseh, you can pay them off with money and not with land. What are the cases? B'char l'pashat. So we'll say, just to go through these cases quickly, which are quite interesting, B'char l'pashat also means like this. Let's say, right, father dies and leaves behind multiple sons. One of them is a B'char. B'char gets Pishnaim, a double portion. But let's say after the death of the father, one of the non-B'char sons improved the property. So now part of the property is worth more, so the B'char doesn't get Pishnaim, doesn't get a double portion in the parts of the property improved since the father's death by one of the other brothers. So instead, what ultimately he could do is he could pay the other brothers for the improvements, but not in land, in money. Similarly, again, let's say if there is a lender, ultimately again by ksuvas isha or yisomim, all of these could go ahead and be paid off with money and not with land. Same idea, ultimately, again, if there is a creditor who had lien against the property and that property was subsequently purchased by someone else. So we'll say the whole chap over here is in all of these cases, although these people have an encumbrance against land, you could satisfy their debt with money and you don't have to give them real estate. So we'll say one second. What about that last case of where a Baal Chov is going in and seizing property from someone who purchased it afterwards? Ultimately, again, is there shevach in that case? Is there entitlement to improvements for the lokeach? V'amar Shmuel, Baal Chov goves hashevach. But also we learned that a creditor, when he sees his property, is entitled to take everything, even if there were improvements. V'chite malo kashya. Maybe you say there's no contradiction. We'll say first wide line, kan b'shevach hamagilek seifayim, kan b'shevach hamagilek seifayim. Maybe it depends on the improvement. Maybe improvements that are ready to be harvested are not considered to be part of the land, versus other improvements which are considered to be part of the land. But yet every day this kind of stuff happens, and Shmuel entitles ultimately again the creditor to collect from improvements, even if the improvements literally again reach up to the shoulders, which means they're ready to be harvested. To which the Gemara says, Lokashya hadim masik beikashir ara ushvacha, hadlo masik beikashir ara ushvacha. It's about two different cases. One is talking about where the creditor himself is entitled to the value of the land plus improvements. Then he's allowed to take everything. One is talking about a case where he's not entitled to, he's only entitled to the debt is only corresponds to the value of the land, not to the value of the land and improvements. I v'chila masik shir ara ushvacha, diyav lezuzi lelokeach, u'mesalik le. And therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, when the entitlement of the creditor is only the amount of the land, right? Or I should say it's the land, but not the land and improvements. So halacha l'maisa gives him money, and therefore, again, removes his debt like that. He's not entitled to take real estate. So hanicha l'man damar, that makes sense according to the opinion that says, so I'll say that makes sense to say that if the purchaser has money, he doesn't have the ability to remove the Baal Chov like that. So I'll say, but if he says there's a case of where he has money, he's allowed to go ahead and take care of the creditor with money and not with real estate. Why doesn't he say, if I had money, I could remove you, creditor, from the entire real estate lien. So there is hashta de leslie zuzi. Now that I don't have money, havli geriva de ara ba'ara de shir shvachai. So at least give me the amount of money corresponding, or give me the amount of land corresponding to the improvements that I made. And what's the case here? Kevan de shavi nehila apotiki. The case here also is where he established land as an apotiki. Remember again, apotiki is a defined source of repayment. Ultimately, again, it says you're only going to receive payment only from this particular parcel of land. Okay, so we'll say, so I'm sorry, I know we did that last part quickly, but let's just bring this together. So we'll say, halacha l'maisa, what comes out over here? So we'll say, so remember, let's bring this all together, right? Case number one was where I lent Reuven money, right? Collateralized property, just to bring these two pieces together. And a collateralized property. Reuven died. Okay, so now I'm still owed money, so I'm allowed to collect from the land. The issue is the land has been improved since Reuven died. I'm claiming Reuven made the improvements, and therefore, halacha l'maisa, I'm entitled to the improvements as well. Yisomim are claiming that no, they made the improvements, and therefore, although I have a lien against the land, I have no claim against improvements. What's the halacha? So he passed like Rabbi Yochanan that the burden of proof is on the Yisomim. Right? Since I have a lien against land, it's collateralized land, it's as if it's already in my possession. If they want to prove that they made the improvements and not Reuven, that burden of proof is upon them. That's on them. Fine. So we'll say that's part one. Part two, I will say, is let's say they do prove that they made the improvements. Right, so fine. So they show. So in which case I, the lender, have no entitlement to the improvements. I have to pay them for the improvements. I want to give them cash. They say no. We want land. We want land corresponding to the amount of the improvements. Then what's the halacha? Both sides. The halacha is we paskin. You could pay them off with money, and you need not give them land. So any time that you're seizing property, but the person who you're seizing property from made improvements, and you are not, you the Caesar, right, the lender, right, or the the creditor, and not entitled to improvements, you have to pay the person for the improvements, but you need not pay them with land. You are allowed to pay them with money. So therefore, I will say again, so it's come full circle. If indeed the Yisomim were able to prove, and they were able to show, we made the improvements, not Reuven. If that's the case, then I, the creditor, am not entitled to the improvements, but I'm allowed to pay them for the improvements with cash, even though they demand land. Beautiful. Mishnah. Well, let's go. We have another minute. Mishnah. Well, this is very interesting. Hamekabel sada mechaver l'shavua. So the Gemara says l'shavua echad b'sheva meos zuz v'ashvius minanis. Well, this is a very interesting case. Let's say I go ahead and I lease Reuven a field for a shavua. Right, for a shavua. Now we'll say shavua means a 7-year period. So now we'll say, so now what happens? So Reuven rents it, and the value of the lease is 700 zuz. Now we'll say it turns out that one of those years is Shemitah. So Reuven claims, okay, well obviously the Shemitah year doesn't count as part of the lease, right? Because I can't do anything during the Shemitah year, so I get an extra year. I get an extra. So effectively, the field will be with Reuven for 8 years. That's what Reuven's claiming over here. So we'll say, the halacha is it doesn't work that way. When you lease a field for a shavua, this is the verbiage of the lease. When the verbiage of the lease is for a shavua, it's understood that included in that is shmita. I understand this 1 year that Reuven is not getting to work the field, but Lamaisa, that's the way it works. So it's like Kibla Himenu Shava Shanim B'Sheva Me'osos. On the other hand, if I rented the field to Reuven for 7 years, then what's the halacha for 700 zuz? Ein shvius min minyan. Ultimately, again, Shemitah is not part of the regulation. So both say we're going to stop over here for today, but it's just interesting that Allah, everything depends on, like most things in life, on how you say it. If you lease someone a field for a shavua, right, Shemitah is included in that. If you lease them the field for 7 years, Shemitah's not included with that. All right, we'll say to be continued tomorrow. What a day! What a day! What a day! What a day! Shkoyach. All right, Chavra on Zoom, have a great day, everyone. Okay, everybody, good morning.